What's going on? Hey, what's Sam?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, let's see how we can get Sam in here. We are now live on this Wednesday. We're already halfway through the month, if you can believe that. Halfway through July.
Yeah. You'll probably have to sit back just a little bit.
Yep.
Camera good. All right. That's it.
Perfect. Well, we got a special guest in studio that we're going to get to shortly. We're going to get to some news. But introduce yourself for our lovely fans across the world, and then we're going to get to your products and the amazing stuff that you do.
Well, my name is Caviar, Caviar Club. I'm sorry, I'm looking.
No, you're good.
My name is Caviar, Caviar Club. Been in Atlanta for roughly about 4 years now, in the cannabis space for a decade.
I'll tell you, he's got a couple of these products that are absolutely fantastic. So we're going to get into why he made it, what it's about, how they can contact with you so that we can get your products pushed a little bit more.
Absolutely.
So I think your stuff's fantastic.
I'm glad that you think that, man. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're going to do a couple of notes, get you to chime in here too. We're going to start with Maryland, which I don't know if you heard. Last Saturday, well, now we a little bit further because we are actually in the second week, but Maryland on July 1st, dispensary opened their doors for adults. Sales topped 10 million over the weekend.
Wow.
Over the whole holiday weekend, 10 million.
Wow.
Think about that, compared with almost 4 million in state sales last year over the holiday. Now, the governor, Wes Moore, had this to say: that Maryland's time to lead in the new space, our time to forge new partnerships between our government and our people, our time to create an economy that is more competitive while also being more equitable, and it's our time to get this right while we do it right. So it sounds like a step in the right direction.
I would agree.
Maryland has always been a state. They had the gifting policy.
Mhm.
So you couldn't legally sell it, but they gifted to
Right.
you. So that was the auspice that they had to actually work by. So for them to be able to change, and now they can actually see the money from that standpoint, instead of having to hide it and jump through holes and duck and hide and look up and see if anybody's coming to get them. This is a big change from then to there. So big shout out to the state of Maryland and the governor for making those changes to give our people and everyone a chance just to work into the cannabis space. It's been difficult when one is still on the Schedule 1 list. And with it being that, it just makes it even harder. Now that it's legal, it's like, okay, now we can go ahead and go full-fledged. But still, one of the things that we want to do in this podcast is still teach people awareness and know what's going on in the neighboring states, so that way that they can make the gains and the strides to get into this tremendous opportunity. The cannabis space represents more than $800 billion imported. So if we can get it done here instead of it being imported, we can do a lot.
Oh yeah, and just like you were saying, how you're very familiar with the gifting, and being that you have other businesses than just cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand how the gifting works, but you still got to think, as an entrepreneur in that space, you've got to be nervous by saying, "Here's my product. I'm going to gift this to you, but you're buying this." You still got to kind of think, somebody watch me, somebody going to report me, somebody going to do this, somebody going to do that, because that's a two-edged sword almost, so to speak. What do you think?
Absolutely. And from my experience, I actually got started in the District of Columbia. So that gifting law, when the law was passed in DC and Maryland took shape after it, there was always a little bit of kind of concern on making sure that your verbiage was proper.
Right.
Anytime you were in a public space, if we were just a couple buddies hooking up in the back alley or something like that, no problem. But when I took Caviar Club in a public arena, I always made sure to be very particular with the words to use, because you were always concerned, especially in Maryland, the DC area, where ATF, FBI, CIA, and every other alphabet combination you can think of,
all in your backyard.
Literally right there, like I could catch the bus and pass up the ATF building on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So you were always concerned, thinking that somebody here, even if not directly, but maybe indirectly, because government jobs are such a huge deal for Marylanders and people who live in the District of Columbia, that you could be dealing with somebody who could report you, investigate you, put a spotlight on you. And of course, you don't want that, especially when you're trying to provide a good or a service that you believe should be freely accessible to any and everybody.
Take out of your pockets.
Yep.
Especially defending yourself in a court of law.
Absolutely, but then on the other side, even if they don't go after you for the gifting end, then they might try to send the person for the other end just to create more of a hardship for you to stop that part.
Yeah.
So, it's two sides of the same coin, unfortunately.
Yeah. You know what actually kind of taught me a little bit of the experience, and it was a completely unrelated field, but it taught me a little bit about it. Well, as a teenager, I once worked in San Francisco for a tourist company that everybody's familiar with Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, there was only one company that had the contract to deliver boat cruises to Alcatraz. Alcatraz is considered a historical landmark, so you can't legally scout the tickets to go to Alcatraz. They have to be set at a flat price rate, which I think at the time was $24. So you couldn't charge above that. I've seen a lot of companies in San Francisco do, they would pair the Alcatraz ticket with something else. So you get an Alcatraz ticket and a city tour, Alcatraz ticket and a bus ride, Alcatraz and a bean pie, anything that they'll pair it with so that they could scalp it, but it had to be paired with something.
Right.
And that kind of gave me a little familiarity when the gifting policy came. Now we're charging $50 for a sock, right?
Right.
And obviously some stuff was a little over the top. You want to kind of make the gift at least, especially when you're in a public arena and want to be taken serious, the gift can at least have a perceived value. So don't just get a plain white sock. At least, do the Forrest Gump thing and at least put a smiley face on it, to make it a little bit more reasonable.
I was saying for Alcatraz, maybe put some stripes down there and have them look like the jail cells. But now speaking on a different end, New Hampshire. So it's talking in the Northeast. Did you hear about that yet? Stand alone among the New England states for not having legalized cannabis, right? As much as the governor, Chris Sununu, couldn't stand it, wanted to keep it that way, has decided to bow inevitably. A bill passed legislature last week that would set up a commission to study legalize through state-run stores. Now, state-run, of course, they're going to have their regulations, their rules, but it's a step, especially when you have the governor saying, I don't want to do this.
So technically, in my opinion, that's a huge conflict of interest. Let's tell you why. Because the state can prosecute you for illegally selling,
Right.
but then they're competing with you. So where's the actual ethics in it? So can they unlawfully target you,
Right.
because you're not a state store?
Huge conflict of interest, and it kind of shows the hypocrisy and why a lot of people don't want to get into the marijuana laws, just because of, I've noticed that a lot of states want to kind of either take the method of California and Colorado, which has a little bit more hands-on, and then others that just kind of, you guys run and, don't want to touch it, just want to tax it. They want to benefit off the taxing of it. I don't understand how you can regulate and still prosecute. I believe that's going to set up a lot of legal loopholes in the future for getting a lot of people who are incarcerated off. I mean, it has to, right?
Obviously, it would, because let's just say from a compliance standpoint.
Yeah.
And you put employees in there and they make a mistake.
Yeah.
Now, me and you can literally hold them to that mistake and burn the state for that mistake. That mistake can also exonerate a number of people at the same time. It also can force change. So it might be a good thing, but at the same time, we just got to look at it on both ways. But there is a huge conflict of interest there.
I can see that. Yeah.
So now, have you heard of the CCSR?
Never.
All right. So last month, a group of cannabis companies, organizations, and experts formed a dedicated rescheduling cannabis, the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduled Reform, CCSR. All right. Got right to work, has already released a report calling for marijuana to be either descheduled entirely or rescheduled from Schedule 1 that we talked about, to Schedule 3, 4, or 5, which would lead any administrative action possibly. Now, how big could the CCSR be?
That's tremendous because if it just takes on a whole different classification other than Schedule 1, it's legal at that point in time. It's openly widely available to the public. So that's one. Rescheduling is to be honest with you, the commander in chief we have in place, that wouldn't happen. He hadn't even decided. He hadn't talked about it. Even some of the things that's been put in his lap, he hasn't done anything about it. So on that end, trying to, I guess, as long as we can reschedule it, we're good. They're not going to deschedule it. I don't see it.
I don't see the deschedule. I think the rescheduling is highly important. There are plenty of people in the political realms that want it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, when we've got a commander in chief and a vice president who look at their track record hugely and have usually been against this. I mean, she's gotten what? Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people incarcerated in California for this. You know?
It's up there.
It's crazy.
It's up there.
It's up there.
It's up there.
In San Francisco, of all places,
right,
where she had the groundswell and the support to push back, and she chose to run a conservative platform. You know, a lot of people were very dissatisfied with the work that she was doing in the state of California, particularly, like I said, in San Francisco, which is had black mayor, even though the city's heavily gentrified. You know, has always been a forefront for political movements, and she chose not to be part of that.
San Francisco also has an issue with police corruption as well.
Yeah.
So
what city doesn't?
Well, they don't, but that city in particular is over the top.
It seems to have the higher rates.
They unlawfully target black males. I was a victim of that as well in that state.
Yeah, his story is very, very interesting. That's for say for sure when that happened.
It's very crazy. So that state there had a number of lawsuits filed against the police department. I mean, and it's not just your normal number.
I always felt like Oakland and Los Angeles, San Francisco, I guess, because of it being more of a Manhattan type of environment.
It's very diversified. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
A tremendous lot more Pacific there, which it creates its own unique challenges, but at the same time, that police locale definitely had a huge amount of issues. I'm talking about combined for the whole state of California, they was up there. I'm talking about number one, and I'm talking about with a large leading gap in the disparity. So
I remember growing up in the time of the Oakland Riders, I believe it was the name of the police clique that had gained a lot of national attention. So, but I can definitely see in San Francisco having a very unique set of issues. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now you got a big tourist market and everything else, but being able to go in those places should, and I think would, make the business expand throughout, because now people can go there already on their vacation, try the products, visit these stores, and it can just help a boom.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've seen what's done to Vegas. We've seen what's done to Colorado.
And I remember when having a blunt in Vegas could have got you, jail time.
Well, it's still technically, honestly, it can. Because even though
I should say, I
like
remember
alcohol,
when it did.
Right.
Now technically it can, but they won't.
Right.
The culture is just not there for them. It's decriminalized, at least culture-wise. But I remember literally where you had to sneak and hide to smoke your blunts in Vegas. As somebody who's been there quite a few times, and now completely different dispensaries are there.
Yep. And for those people that are listening that aren't familiar with that, that's the example I can give you. That's like, we could go to the liquor store right now.
Yeah.
We're of age, we could buy it, but we're not supposed to walk the street and drink it. We're supposed to go back to our house, domicile, wherever that's considered. And that's the same thing in Vegas. Yes, you can go by dispensaries. You're not supposed to smoke it outside, technically. It's supposed to be in your own residence, whatnot, but we've seen what happens. And that's why I'm saying that's the best example I can give you, because we see people walking on drinks all the time.
Yeah.
So that's the way I'm saying that's the best thing, because we found that out from talking about those cannabis lounges, because they do have one right now in Vegas in the hotel, only on the 4th floor. But you can't smoke within so many feet of a casino. All those things are still technically a push, but we've seen where it's not quite happening that way. But hey, I commend them. Not saying turn a blind eye, but let's allow.
Yeah, or at least give it a space for it to be conducted.
Exactly.
And that's all most people are really just asking for.
I mean, alcohol is a far worse substance than this stuff, period.
I don't want to feel like the perv copping his porn mag,
Right.
with a jacket on over something that's supposed to be medicine, right? So I gotta go sneak in the back alley and smoke a joint behind, a trench coat.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing when we were out there last November that I found interesting, and especially at night, we've seen it. You have a high homeless popularity, just walking around.
Yeah.
And of course, they're asking for money. We had a couple ask for money. It was like, no, we don't have anything. And then they go, "We got a joint then?" Which we found that rather.
Life has been very stressful. So that PTSD they going through probably is
Right.
extreme.
Exactly. So now you've heard of Greenleaf, of course.
Yes.
Heard of Greenleaf as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Big guess. Did you hear that they actually filed a complaint in federal court this past week?
No.
They actually filed that complaint, contending that the marijuana legislation law signed in May of 2022 violates the U.S. Constitution and the national labor standards. Okay? The lawsuit comes on the heels of the second settlement agreed between the company and its workers for alleged federal labor law violations. All right?
What would be the labor-related issue?
We're going to go into a little bit, of course, not going to go to all these notes because we want to give you plenty of time.
Okay.
But some of the things is they're going, it's a 125-page document for one, that requires all retailers to enter into labor peace agreements with their workers, which will allow the employees to unionize in exchange for not picketing, boycotting, or stoppage of work.
Okay.
But they're also tying it in with saying because we don't have safe banking, that's part of the issue is why they can't do that, because they can't get backed. This is where Greenleaf is taking the issue, alleging that the labor agreement deprives employees for their bargaining power, forces them to agree on favorable terms, and deprives employees of their right to engage in labor activities protected under federal laws such as strikes. So that's part of it. Specifically, the lawsuit filed in the district court, the U.S. District Court of Rhode Island, says that forced labor law violates the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution as well as the National Labor Relations Act.
I mean, I totally see that. I think the catch is that everyone want to give themselves not only an exception, but they want to give themselves some form of a hall pass, some type of a plan B.
Right.
Plan B would be get me out of this bind that I'm in, especially when you don't have safe banking in place to support the business, to get applicable loans. Let's just say you get a spike in business and your production increases, and let's just say it takes 30 to 45 days for the monies to come back around, but you got to pay those employees.
Yep.
So you still have things that are counting against you. So what you're doing is you write a contract to give you insurances, but then you actually violate federal law.
So there's where part of your issue. So for example, a couple of these highlights, the Cannabis dispensary applied for the license in 2010. Okay, they began selling medical to customers in 2013. But in April 2021, Greenleaf workers voted to join the local chapter of the United Food and Commercial Workers. And negotiations between Greenleaf and Local 328 continued through the following year when the first union contract ratified in August 2022. During this process, the state legalized recreational marijuana, including the provisions for the labor peace agreements. And Greenleaf is the company that says the union was in transit and unwilling to compromise because it knew it would soon have increased leverage through the LPA mandate. All right. So a couple of notes there. The complement also cites the terms of the contract, which include a $1,000 ratification bonus for workers, which they're saying is largely unfavorable.
Wow.
We have a few employees who are so egregiously violated workers' rights to extend all the way back to Seth Brock, the company founder and CEO, has his Greenleaf. Because of the actions, the employees like Seth Brock labor peace agreements have become a necessity to protect the workers' rights. Okay. That's already won the election 21-1 in 2021. How about that? Despite the fierce union bursting attempts to buck. Now, they're looking for back pay. Does that back pay go all the way to 2010? 2013? 2021? I'm not sure. They're literally saying that last month, the National Labor Relations Board ordered Greenleaf to stop threatening, demoting, and laying off workers because of the union support and to give more than $116,000 in back pay to workers who were unjustly fired, as well as the remaining employees who became part of the union.
So, you know, the tough part about this argument in any business, you want to have a fair, equitable operation for your employees. But preparedness is probably one of the most important things for a business. So you got to have not only some form of saving for allocation for a rainy day, your rainy day
Absolutely.
fund. So that rainy day fund means any dealing with legalities, legislature, lawyers. So anything that will create an ill,
Right.
you need that rainy day policy for that. To get that back out of it and then still keep a price in the market that's competitive, but then you want to also be able to pay your people competitively. You still have to be able to afford the cost of doing business. So that is, when I hear this is as a business and employer, it's like, God, this is a tough one. But you want to make it right and fair for the employees.
Well, you do. Well, here's what's crazy. The state licensed shops, including Greenleaf, reportedly are combined. Now, granted, we understand that you still have product, you have the employees, you have your brick and mortar stores, all that stuff that of course has to be paid. So this is not pure profit, but all of these in that area combined for $8.9 million in sales in May.
Gross.
Well, I don't know. I just have 8.9 billion, right? So combined sales. Now, of course, that's not all Greenleaf, but you showed that they're making money. But of course, we're still talking about you have to have your product. You got to pay for that. You got to pay for all of your taxes and your costs. Right. So it's not like, hey, Greenleaf's making 8.9, but only giving the employees this much. So we understand that as talking to business scales, but it sounds like there's got to be the money to be able to make this all work. So the sales are there. But one of the things they're citing is the fact that the tax is so high on them, citing that the high tax and regulations as the reason why the state has a vested financial interest in the industry's success. So could it be there's not enough regulation on the tax that's causing this issue as well from the state in? It's a possibility.
This is a possibility. And I think what it really comes back down to it is if they properly have made a department that can legislate everything and then know that the allocations are there to actually regulate. Because if you don't have enough money to regulate it, then that means things will fall through the cracks, and then you'll have things that's on the market that may be illegal or may not have went through
proper testing channels.
Proper testing channels, yeah. So that's definitely a drawback.
Yep. So those are some of the notes that I wanted to hit throughout the nation. And I kind of want to give you time to talk about your products, what brought you to the products, why you developed these great products. And I know you brought a few little samples.
Yeah.
Love to give you the floor, talk about it. We'll ask a few questions here and there. But
All right. Well, as I mentioned, I've been in the cannabis space business-wise for about 10 years now. And what really got me started, well, in high school, I had a level of popularity for, developing edibles and treats. And that was giving away for
you were gifting them, right?
Yeah. Truly gifting them.
Right.
Back then, friendship and popularity and clout was enough payment, right?
Build a name for yourself.
Build a name for myself. And then, every now and then I'd take some pocket change in exchange, but for the most part, it was just something that was fun to do. Resumed it again in college at one point, and I always got high remarks. But the catalyst for what really got me to see it in a more serious light is that I had an auntie, God rest her soul, of course, but I had a very lovely auntie. She taught me a lot about raising dogs. I'm a huge, well, everybody loves dogs, but I would say I'm a pretty decent dog trainer. And I learned, she was one of my greatest teachers when it comes to understanding the psychology of a dog and how to actually teach them. She was so good that, man, she could get her dogs to sing. Like, like they just, and because of my love for my auntie and how much she had taught me, She was old school though, and
Right.
never really believed in like smoking herb. And she was dealing with multiple sclerosis and other body pains and things like that. And you know, her son is one of my closest blood cousin, and he smokes like a chimney. And even he tried and tried and tried. You know, mama, you know, she never would actually smoke it.
And there's a lot of people like that. I understand. I get it.
Completely get it.
Still, there's so much that can be helpful for them, even if they're not smoking. There's other ways.
Absolutely. So I came up with used to do cookies and brownies and stuff like this, but I came up with a tincture, as I've come to learn that it's actually called. That was coconut oil based, because she did really enjoy coconut oil and didn't mind ingesting that. And I kept it completely vegan in nature, to sweeten it for the taste, you know, use agave, and then a few other, you know, flavorings and whatnot to give it a nice texture and taste that's very caramel cinnamon to the taste, and digest is very smooth. And she loved it, and you know, it helped her with her different body pains and aches. You know, she said when she was digested, she can go often 6-8 hours forgetting that she might have had, like, you know, a surgery or operation somewhere. And with that, I really found that I could connect not only a little bit deeper with her, especially in her last years, but it also provided me something that I could offer to others who was experiencing a very similar thing. And, you know, after her, I had a cousin who had been shot several times, and he takes it and he says, man, he doesn't feel, you know, typically when it rains and stuff like that, you know, because it's lodged in his spine.
Okay.
And they can't take the bullet out without paralyzing.
Right.
So it's always in pain management is his life now.
Right.
And man, I make him something, and he's always remarks about how much it helps him with that pain management. So that was being able to take marijuana and use it for sincerely helping people was something that I found to be a blessing.
So you told me, but I'm gonna have you explain it to them. Putting the agave in, for example.
Yeah.
Aside from these benefits of what it helps with the product that you have for these aches and pains, what's the big importance of having the agave? What is the reasoning for that helps the individual?
So, as I said, when I started, it was for shits and giggles. It was for fun. You know, it was getting high with my buddies. I learned that, you know, as using the sugar and the brown sugar and the stuff, those can, you know, you overconsume can make you both fatty, and they're not so healthy for the body when it breaks down. Whereas an agave is a natural sweetener that also has its own, you know, health-like effects, but most importantly, that you can maintain the taste without having to sacrifice, you know, somebody who can overconsume because it tastes so good, you know, getting sugar rush cravings, spiking their blood pressure, are just putting BS in their body.
Right. So people who are diabetic or have high blood pressure, this product, which to be honest, this is really the first one I've heard that has that mindset. I'm sure there's other products out there that do, but I've never really heard it that, hey, I'm trying to make sure I'm helping someone who's diabetic or had blood pressure issues too, to make sure this product is beneficial on both ends, so I'm not spiking them into another
problem, right?
Yeah.
You're taking now you're dealing with the pain, but now you're spiking your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely don't want to create that. And I purposely selected the ingredients with that in mind. It's like, what can I use that can actually ultimately, if possible, end up on the shelf of Whole Foods,
right,
and not at Piggly Wiggly.
And you know, for those national brands and franchises, for them to widely accept it, the descheduling or rescheduling of it are probably one of the more key components. But the research data is going to have to be even more, and then the sanctioning either by USDA or the FDA are key to getting them on those shelves.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but you know, the more benefit you can give an ops is that, hey, this is not just for pain management.
Yeah.
You know, I think that could help because, of course, I know you've done some studies on it, and it'd be better for, you know, more studies being done. But this possibly, from my thought, this could also help somebody that has blood pressure issues.
Yeah.
You know, because we know that a lot of cannabis, a lot of the cannabinoids and all that stuff can help people with that. But being that it is a natural thing, I would think that it would help the body even more so than just the pain management.
Well, you know, cannabis overall has it's numerous medicinal factors, and especially when you start getting in the realm of like CBD and other cannabinoids, and specifically how they target. Now, me personally, I always tend to side with trees that are a bit more on the sativa base. However, I've made batches that are indica heavy in nature. But my purpose and reasoning for using like a sativa base is because I want to. I found them to be the best in keeping you active. You know, I think for a person who is managing an injury per se, you don't want to always keep them in a state of the pain is already keeping them down, right? Most people want to manage the pain as they're doing things. It's when you're active that you want to manage the pain. So that's why I kind of focus in that avenue, and then CBDs, of course, because of the muscle regeneration, muscle relaxation, has been a huge impact. So that's literally what I kind of focus on, and I've learned those over time. That came through a lot of like trial and error and experience, and just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, right, and what kind of work. And I feel like now I've arrived to a space where I kind of like pinpointed what's been working the best, especially for the people who come to me the most consistently.
Well, that's one of the things that's important, because you look at the products, and like you're talking about pain management and dealing with it. A lot of these pain managements that we see, the opiates and all, they cause other issues.
Yes,
that cause a big, severe problem that, yes, I'm helping with your pain for a minimal amount, but I'm causing issues on other realms. These aren't causing those issues.
And I would love to speak on that for a minute, because that was really the breaking point, is seeing the amount of money that's spent through health insurance, premiums, and pills. And I have older family members. I have a grandmother. I know everybody does, right? And being a younger person, you watch some of the things that are ahead of you and saying, I would love to have that, and I don't want that to be my future.
Right.
And seeing the amount of pill bottles that would be on the dresser of my grandmother's house, you know, and it's like, when I grow up, I don't want to be managing a calendar with pills for each day.
For refills, for everything.
This and this side of thing.
Yeah.
Now and then we all know about the opiate crisis. So, you know, there are so many people who are getting pushed off on pills to manage pain. And oftentimes they don't even work to the capacity, you know, and create their own addiction within themselves.
Right, because you're looking at it, and like we're saying, you know, if you're taking 7-8 different pills, not only do you have to remember the refills, you have to remember, okay, I've got to take this before this, make sure I include this with that. This can't be mixed with that.
Yeah. We
don't really have those type of thought process when it comes to these products.
Exactly. I mean, it's not much that doesn't go well with agave.
Right.
You know?
Right. So yeah, show us a little bit of what you brought, how they benefit.
Okay.
I see you got a couple of samples here.
Yeah. Actually, I just brought some flour today.
Okay.
This was one of my favorites at the time being. It's called Diamond Snowballs. This is a flour infusion that I've become quite a big fan of. It's, I guess, to show it a little bit of justice.
Right.
As you can see, take a look for yourself. The flour looks quite white, and that it is processed. It's dipped in hash oil and poured out and then tossed in THCA isolate. So that gives it that frosty white look. It's hybrid. What I found that it gives you a very potent high. You know, you're going to feel it in your head. You're going to have that potent high, very reminiscent to when you first started smoking. Yeah, it takes you there. You there. But however, it doesn't incapacitate you or just, keeps you, too knocked out. Like I said, I'm more of a sativa person overall. I don't really like having that sluggish feeling, that couch feeling especially because I'm on the go a lot. I really only like to smoke like that when I'm at home and I finally took off my bat suit and I can be Bruce Wayne, not Batman, So I found this to be one of the best I've had in years when it comes to being able to smoke and go through my day and really enjoy myself. Yeah.
Of course, I see on the where it has, all the different government warnings as they should.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talks about all that stuff. And we'll post some of this, but it has right here on the package, got Telegram and at Diamond Snowballs.
Yeah.
So that's where you get it. We'll talk a little bit more about where they'll get it. But this particular product, what would you say that kind of is geared towards? Just the relaxation, the pain management?
Well, so my green cream tinctures is what I would use for more direct the person towards for pain management. This one right here is going to be for both the connoisseur and everybody alike. This is pure enjoyment. If you just enjoy flower and you enjoy having a good, and what I really enjoy about it, like I said, it takes me back to when I really started smoking. It's not an overwhelming potency. It's a fun, enjoyable high, and I like it. This has just been the best thing I've smoked in years. To be real.
Yeah, because we all know that one product that your friend has, you try it. Once you have it, you're done for a few hours.
Yeah, you're done. Yeah, you're done. Whatever you had on your schedule, go ahead and just call that in. Yeah.
No heavy machinery, no driving, no showing up at the parents' house.
Exactly.
So a question with the product itself, how would you describe it for your first time smoker? How to approach this?
Oh, don't, because but you're gonna be setting yourself up for a failure. But it's not a horrible start, obviously. If you recall, there was a huge popular strain that came out years ago, a processed strain called Moon Rocks. So, okay, that's totally fine. I'll bring you up to speed. Moon Rocks was, there's a rapper by the name of Corrupt, who's big in 90s hip hop, 90s, early 2000s hip hop on the West Coast. Corrupt. Yeah. So Corrupt kind of was sponsored or brought out this Moon Rock strand, which was I think they were taking OG Kush at the time and dipping it in the hash oil and coating it with wax, right? So it was very gooey. Like when you broke the bud, the coat of wax was all on top of it. So you broke it, it almost looked like a Snicker bar, right? Because when you're breaking it apart, the wax would be just, And so visually it looked very appealing. And a lot of people went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because, it was like, oh, wow, they're coating marijuana with wax now. And visually it was dope and it was a great concept. But practically what a lot of people would later come to find is that there were a few problems. One, the wax on being coated on the weed, if you ever, it's a hard hit initially. It didn't taste well. That was a big part. Also, it didn't taste well after you smoked it because of the strength. You're oftentimes going to put it out, come back, but now that wax has been fired, so now it has this like burnt,
right,
almost chemically taste to it.
So now you think you've destroyed the product. It's no longer potent.
And because of the wax, you have to burn it at a high heat.
Right.
Oftentimes, butts would go out, and so then you have to mix it with other stuff, and and for the price point of it, you would have to decide if it was really worth it for you. We're talking about champagne bottles for a $35, right? Yeah. So what I found with this and the THCA isolate on it is that it's a smoother smoke. It's better tasting for one. I don't need to break it down with anything else. I can smoke it just by itself. And, the high is easier to cruise with. I don't feel that crash come down that it had from when smoking wax. Yeah.
So I was gonna say the wax itself, great for sealing and holding it.
Yeah.
But I can see too many other issues with it. I mean, we all know that anything that you've used, when you got wax around it, you get that residual. And if you burn it, oh yeah, I mean, and well, for one, you're now bringing attention to yourself. I'm sure it had a smell anyway. So people are like, what is that? Why is it burning? What do you have?
Right.
You know, it's just, me myself, I don't have much of a sense of smell at all, but I know that wax has got to be horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure it's got to distort the flavor.
It did. It did. That was one of the biggest complaints about moon rocks, especially, you know, after you get past the whole first time experience and the hype of it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody who smoked it with any level of consistency. Matter of fact, I didn't really know anybody who smoked it with a level of consistency beyond like a few months, because you start to realize that, you know, actually with some of the processing, you're taking away from the flower,
Right.
And at that point you can either just dab, you know, or just find high-end flower. Plus it would raise your tolerance up too, you know. So
I was gonna say too, from what you're talking about on a price point with everything that's involved in it,
yeah,
I'm sure the price point, like, this just isn't worth my time and investment, because these are the sides that are happening, not the side effects, but this is what's happening when I'm using it. So why would I not just buy something that's ready to go?
it was targeted to a hip hop crowd that wanted to overspend. You know,
I get the target, I get the mindset, I get the idea, but
didn't really have a lot of practicality to it, and that's essentially what I'm just been trying to say. It was a dope idea,
Mhm.
and that idea helped springboard this one.
right.
So, you know, all props to it, but you know, sometimes you got to retire old things.
Well, no, and I mean, we don't get to where we are without having some initial, I don't want to say a failure, because it did well for a while.
Yeah.
But your initial start, your initial concept, your initial idea, we're going to grow off of that. You know, gentlemen, I had a conversation the other day about music. We're talking about, like, for example, who are some of the big groups out there in the hip hop realm. We had a different mindset on the groups. Not that either one of us is right or wrong. We just had a different concept. But my idea is, like, for example, I think NWA is one of the best, not just because of who was involved, but everything that happened afterwards.
Yeah.
How they went from that group to these individuals and kept growing and kept building. So to me, that was the success of them. You know, so, and that's kind of the idea here. You started off with one and look what it's become. Not that this is the same company or group, you know, that did those moon rocks, but we have to keep moving forward to progress everything. So sometimes we have a great idea and maybe somebody liked the moon rocks more than this, and that's fine. Doesn't mean it was wrong. Just the conceptual idea.
Yeah.
We got to get from point A to point Z. We're only on what, C now, maybe?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Man.
How many other products did you have? Is this the one that you just focused on and say this is what I'm going with? Or?
You know, honestly, that was just what I was carrying in my backpack
Okay.
in the town. And I wasn't certain if I was going to be able to display. So, you know, I didn't.
Gotcha.
And like I said, that's what I've been personally,
Gotcha.
Yeah, because the one that I really was highly impressed with, and I know you spoke on it, but was the one, I guess,
The
Sit on the
great,
picture.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think, cool.
And it captures attention for a reason. Like I said, I've been at this for a while, and didn't just hop off the porch. And a lot of it has come from trial and error. And you know, I see a lot of the edible space and being a lot of candies and cookies, and you know, there are now starting to be a push for savories, but it's oftentimes it's food that's going to be high calorie, sugar spiking,
Right.
and that's just, I wanted to offer something different,
Yeah.
you know, because anybody
Sure.
will give you some gummy worms, some cupcakes, some brownies, you know, maybe even now I notice with tacos and the oil drips and stuff like that. But what if I'm not necessarily either hungry, or if your product is so good, I overconsume, you know, whereas opposed,
Especially if you're not in this realm normally, hey, I want another, hey, I want another.
Exactly.
A friend of ours that we had on the show, we had a mutual acquaintance who went to a friend's house and thought they had those taquitos or whatever. But they weren't.
Oh, the chip bag.
Yeah. So they
yeah.
ate an entire bag.
I have a huge problem with that. A lot of the disguisables,
Correct.
edibles they're not so clearly labeled, and then many of them are playing on popular products.
Right.
So now you have people easily consuming a bag of Doritos and
10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. I mean, they're not going to sit there and, oh wait, this says government. They're not going to do that. They're going to see the bag and go.
Now, I know there used to be a big old fear during Halloween about kids getting candies that they weren't supposed to, and commonly we used to say, well, nobody's going to get candies.
Right.
But there is a little truth to it in the form of the marketability and how they're not really distinguishing that this is a product because they're trying to be so eye appealing. Now, granted, I'm not going to be careless to leave my edible candies around on Halloween, but if you are in a household with children, as you say, and somebody's just going through your things, that's I find that to be a big problem, and I don't understand why it needs to be done. Just come out with a good product,
right?
Instead of mimicking something mainstream.
But even if you're responsible, and you got some friends over or family at the house while you're getting ready, and let's be honest, what a lot of people do. Oh, what's over here? What's in here? They start probing.
Yeah.
Oh, I see some chips. I'm hungry. Well, what if you've got, nieces or nephews or whatever, and they start eating? You don't want to do that, even though you were being responsible.
Yeah.
It's still, they're not going to do anything except for notice the package and go, oh, that looks good.
Yeah.
And now, even though you're responsible, there's an issue.
Doritos.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen all the packaging. We walked through that warehouse, the stuff in Vegas. I mean, and I get why they're doing it. I do. Yeah. But even in a responsible case, there's still that 0.3% or whatever that could fall into the wrong hands because they packaged it that way.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how responsible you are. Because let's look at it. How many times do we see childproof, and the childs are the ones that can get in that proof, not the adults. So responsibility is not always the answer.
You can't childproof a child.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So packaging is important, and you're one which we tried. We don't have it here, but to me, you're not going to get confused on that bottle.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not going to look like the candy the kids want. Yes, it is sweet. Yes, it is savory, and it has great. Like I told you, man, that'd be perfect on biscuits. But the people who are marketing need to be responsible to make sure they're doing it properly.
Yeah,
across the board.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, absolutely. And we're going to get. I'm going to get you to send me some more pictures. We're going to put them up on some of our sites other than just these.
Yeah.
So we're going to put the websites or anywhere that they can follow you, that they can reach out to you for these products. Because I'm telling you, everything I've seen from you so far is something that these people can use. And it's going to help them. I know that.
Well,
now, I do have a question because it kind of happened with the one particular product you gave me. Somebody trying to help, and I thank them for it, put it in a bag that had some ice. So once it hits ice, is that product no longer that good anymore, or can it still be used? So I'm asking not just for myself, but I'm asking on the end of, for storage purposes.
Oh, yeah. So
people need to be careful with certain products on storage as well.
I believe I know what you're speaking of, and that came from. So my solution with that has been to use a liquid form of the base as opposed to an unrefined form of the base. Because yes, ice does tend to rock it up,
right? And it kind of did. It kind of gave a crystallization look, and it's kind of cloudy now. But
it gave a crystallization look, and particularly because that's what the infusion is based upon. You don't want to not consume that, right? I did make those for warm, but for warm drinks. That so you don't worry about that. But yes, now I've used a liquid base. So you don't gotta have that concern about it rocking up.
Right, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. That's just something I was curious about because I was looking at it going, I think it's still good.
Yeah,
I don't see it being a problem
because I'm a big tea coffee drinker.
Right.
So I never came across that putting it in ice until it was like, oh, I put it in some soda one time and like, oh man, that was a problem.
Well, the way I had it set now, the person wanted to make sure I didn't lose it, so they put it in the cooler where we had waters in it. So that's kind of what got it. And I was like, oh, thank you, but
put it in the sun.
Okay.
Put it in the sun.
I mean, it's been in room temperature, but I got you.
Yeah, not even but 3 minutes.
Just a quick hit.
It gets liquid real fast.
That's something I want to check with. Like I said, it is liquid, but it's kind of cloudy.
Yeah.
look. But
especially with the heat that we have in Georgia right now. Yeah, y'all might not even take 3.
I know, about a minute and a half, I ought to be good because when we're talking 98 degrees and the humidity and
It's warming in.
I know it is a little bit warm here today, but like I told you, the view's great, isn't it? View's outstanding. So we're heading towards the end of this hour. We want to first give you an opportunity to kind of tell people where they can reach out to you, how they can connect with you. Of course, I'll get that information and post it. We'll have our few closing thoughts. And definitely appreciate you coming up here and showing this and giving us some input.
Well, thank you if you've been streaming and watching along this long, for listening to my story and sharing your platform. Thank you. If you want to reach out to me, I'm available on Instagram at caviarclub.atl. Caviar, CAVIARCLUB, caviarclub.atl.
And I'll be putting that up on our social medias this evening, just in case if you didn't catch that, didn't have a pen. Don't worry, we'll have it up on our Twitter. We'll have it up on our Facebook.
That'd be awesome.
We'll have that up. We'll put it up on our Instagram as well. So yeah, absolutely. No problem on that whatsoever. Definitely appreciate you for coming in. Sam, your closing thoughts today?
Closing thoughts. I definitely would love to figure out how we can do a burn lounge, so that way we can all
Have some snowballs.
and enjoy some of the diamond snowballs that we got right here. So we're gonna look at putting something together private,
Right on.
so that way we can get some more people to experience what you have to offer here. We definitely appreciate you coming out to this display, but also just to show and be a part of the industry. Definitely salute you as being an entrepreneur, someone who knows and believes in the product itself, but also trying to help people at the same time. And I think it's really important for people to hear your testimony, so that way that they can see themselves in the same position that you're in. So that way we can make this a great, equitable opportunity.
Yeah. If anybody's in the city, August 4th, there's going to be the smoke battle,
Okay.
which is going to be myself and my team and 7 other brands competing in a competition judged on different things from our edibles, concentrates, all around presentation and things of that nature. August 4th, you got to find them on Instagram, the smoke battle, to get your tickets. I will be there. I will be participating. I look forward to it because it's going to be a showcase of the Atlanta culture as far as in marijuana. And I believe I'm going to be putting forth a strong effort for those who like natural things and sprayed on and genetically modified. I'm going to be making that push because I've also been trying to push people away from the tobacco leaves and stuff now too. So if you can make it out, support me, or at least throw a shout out.
All right, yeah, and I'll get some more of that information so I can get that up there so people can be finding out about that. We encourage all of you guys to attend. And hey, we're in Atlanta, so even if you're in the Southeast, it's not that far. Make it a weekend. There's plenty to do here.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff. So appreciate everybody that listened. Definitely, like I said, thank you for coming by. Moving forward, we've got a lot more we'd like to do with you, includes you on. Always fantastic. So check all our sites out, Machi Foundation, me, myself, DJNQ75 on Instagram, on Twitter. We'll have this information up this evening. And man, thank you guys for joining us each week, and let's keep this moving forward. Make it even bigger and better.
Yes, absolutely.
Guys, have a safe week and stay warm. It's going to be a hot one. Please hydrate.
All right.